rum and colas, several Mai Tais, 4 Bora Boras, 86. I got to call the jungle doctor. Fishnet stockings, high-heeled shoes, tassel hassle, G-string voodoo. What? Tarzan and Cheetah too? Oh, got to call the jungle doctor. Tahiti too. Tanzania. Tuvalu. Headhunters, now I'm in a stew. Oh, got to call the jungle doctor.
Aloha and welcome to another exciting episode of Tune In Tiki. We're your hosts, the Jersey Pineapple
and Dr. Diz.
And today we're bringing you a unique and diverse panel of bartenders from different corners of the United States.
We're diving into the world of tropical culture, exotic ingredients, and the art of crafting the perfectly inspired cocktail. So grab your favorite tiki mug and let's get started.
Let's start by introducing our panelists. Joining us today, we have Michael McDaniel from Dive Wine and Spirits in Sarasota, Florida, Tamara Nisbetsky from Permanent Vacation in Maitland, Florida, and Christian Salazar Diaz from Anaheim, California. Hello, everyone. Before we embark on this voyage, let's delve into your personal tales. What captivated each of you to venture into the world of cocktails?
So what got me really into cocktails was having drinks out, having a good time with family, and not always enjoying ourselves, and then being able to kind of get flavors that went well together. And so as we took time hanging out, having different drinks, I started to notice different flavors that really sparked my interest, and I wanted to recreate it. So I'd go home and try and figure out, oh man, what did they do? And that kind of got me into wanting to create cocktails and wanting to do fun stuff, because if you're going to spend money and you're going to have drinks, it ought to be worth it. Life is too short not to have something tasty in your mouth. So that kind of was what got me going to really want to start going, hey, how does this mix? I got guava, I got pineapple, I've got, what flavors really pair well together? And that's kind of what drove me to start really creating cocktails.
Absolutely, Michael. I'm definitely the same way. I think my start with cocktails really came from beer, actually. I used to brew with somebody that was very, very talented and just got to learn a lot about how flavors like intermingle with each other and how all these things kind of come together into this beautiful composed piece. And I feel like that really then pushed me into crafting cocktails.
For me, it just started in the kitchen, cooking, getting into flavors and learning about how they interact with each other, just like you guys said. And that just translated and transferred into the world of mixology. And it's just something that's never ending. I'm always learning, even after 20 years. I'm still a student of the game, and I'm still always learning. So it's just an endless passion, so to speak.
Great stuff. Hey, so let's start talking about the creative process behind your cocktails. How do you infuse your drinks with that authentic tropical vibe while adding that personal touch? Let's start with you, Tamara.
I think that I have a cocktail background, so I really take some of my formal knowledge and then use some of these beautiful ingredients that are to my disposal and really just kind of mix my two worlds into making something that is just kind of from the heart. And I could wake up in the middle of the night and feel a recipe and write it down. And I can't wait to get in here and just R&D and play around and really just take classics and get to transform them through the beautiful ingredients that we have here.
Right, and I would say the same. I would take something that's more traditional and say something from the 1930s or something from the past, and try to recreate it using today's technology, today's toys that we have. Maybe having something that's familiar but presented in an unfamiliar way. I love the wow factor of somebody seeing something and then tasting it, and it may be something completely different than what they expected. So that wow factor that you can see is just it's magic. It's magic when you take pride in what you do and you put your love into it. The result is an experience, not a cocktail. It's something more, you know.
I love what you said there, Christian, because like something that drives for my kind of creative passion when I am trying to come up with, especially tropical cocktails and things like that, is I don't want to reinvent the wheel. There's been so many times where I have tried to come up with a recipe, and then lo and behold, after it's done, I look and I'm like, that's pretty much this other drink. And so I think it's more fun to kind of take what has already been well established that are fantastic cocktails and putting your own spin on it. So like, um, one that's become very popular I've seen not just on the internet all over is taking and coconut fat wash and Campari. I remember, one of my first times taking Campari and doing something like that and doing like a what I would call a tiki Negroni. And then of course I look on the internet and others have done it. And so, but yeah, like, and even earlier talking about the food and how those flavors combine. I think that all plays a big part in coming up with interesting tropical takes on things. Recently, there was a brand, Pierre Ferrand, that came out with a yuzu dry curacao, and it's a limited run. And immediately I was like, oh, how can I start imparting, like Japanese flavors? Because using those flavors to do what I would call like almost like a mai tai, but obviously not an original, and using those flavors into that both showcase what a mai tai should be, but also it's unique enough. And then of course I look on some of the forums and immediately people are like, oh, I'm gonna do a yuzu mai tai, and I'm like, oh, there it is, and so, but yeah, so it's fun to take those different flavors and make them personal.
The Zombie, Dom Beach's 1934 classic. Legend has it that a customer, came to his bar and he was suffering from the biggest hangover you could ever imagine. And he needed help. He had no idea. He had a very important meeting to get to. So Dom went to the back of his cabinet. He knew he could make this happen, so he grabbed a bottle of dark age Jamaican rum, a bottle of dark age Puerto Rican rum, some high proof rum, decided to accentuate it with hints of absinthe, citrus, and overall balanced sweetness. Now, keep in mind that I think that Dom had kind of a bit of a heavy hand. So he made it really strong. So much so that the guest stood up and was walking like a zombie. On a positive note, it worked. The guest had an amazing meeting, so to say. But he did have some rules every time someone would come to one of his bars. He could only serve you 2, because any bit more would almost cause the debt to rise.
Before we move on, can each of you share your all-time favorite recipe with our listeners?
For me, it's got to be the Trinidad Sour. I love a good Trinidad Sour. It's just happiness in a glass for me. I could drink it at any time. It could be the first drink, the last drink, the middle drink. I don't care. I love a good Trinidad, and that's basically now. I know there's many ways of making it, and I've had it in many, many different ways. I've had it with Amaro. I've had it milk washed and clarified. I've never had a bad Trinidad, but my favorite is just made with just bitters, some good orgeat, some fresh lemon juice, and some high proof rye. You could also do it with rum. Rum is really good with it too, like a Clement VSOP or something. But yeah, equal parts, and I like it on crushed ice. I know it's served straight up, but I like it on crushed ice.
See, you're touching a little part of my heart there. Mezcal is one of my absolute favorite spirits, and so what's funny is for my wife, I will make a homemade pineapple syrup, and I'll do essentially like a mezcal margarita with pineapple. But honestly, anything with pineapple, anything with good mezcal or good rum, uh, I'm constantly thinking of new drinks almost weekly, if not daily. I'm like trying new ingredients, new things. And so I get into these phases. So like right now I'm in a mezcal phase where I'm like, so one I just kind of finished up recently. I'm calling it a slippery when wet, and it's mezcal, guava liqueur, Aperol, and lime and orange bitters, and that one has been one I have been sipping a lot recently. But outside of that, anything with pineapple, man, I'm a big fan of the pineapple juice, pineapple amaro, pineapple anything.
I love that cocktail too. My face
Mhm.
lit up when you said that. My personal favorite cocktail is a Naked and Famous. I feel like you can't go wrong. Just an equal parts yellow chartreuse, mezcal, Aperol, and lime. Yeah.
All that stuff sounding amazing, guys. I just want to now take your side on how our cultural differences can be implemented in perfecting a fantastic and great tiki drink.
Something I like to do to kind of take a medley of so many cultures that we do have around us is doing kind of a tiki styled rum old fashioned and taking Mama Juana from the Dominican Republic and then using like a beautiful Guyanese rum. I absolutely love the Holmes Key Guyanese rum. And we have a charred orange falernum in house while we do talk about charring fruit and just kind of putting that together and letting all of those flavors really mix and just it's really flavors from all around the world coming together into this one cocktail.
I think one of the things that's important for me when I think about the different cultures is, and I think this is touched on in a lot of different tiki circles, but is not necessarily appropriating a culture, but honoring the culture. And I think finding tasteful ways to do that is important. So, like often when I am thinking of a drink or creating a drink, I try to make sure to give credit where it comes from, but more than that, even in the name, I try to like, so if I'm doing something that might be, maybe I'm using a mezcal or a tequila or something, then even in the name, I'm trying to honor the culture where it's coming from. And so I think regardless of the drink, making sure to be tasteful, because like there's oftentimes, I mean, even with the naming, I'm talking about naming a drink, um, where it can be done playfully, but sometimes it can also come across as disrespectful. And so I think, for me, when I'm creating drinks and honoring that culture, is finding ways to do it in a way that is tasteful. And that's with ingredients as well. When I pick my ingredients, I try to make sure that one example was I did a take on a pearl diver, and what I did was I was calling it a honey diver. I switched out some ingredients using honey, but I made like a Jamaican jerk spiced simple syrup. And when you look online, what is in a jerk, like a jerk sauce, you get a lot of different answers as to what makes a Jamaican jerk. And so I have some friends who are from Jamaica, and so I reached out to them. I was like, hey, listen, I'm not confident on what I'm reading online. When you do your jerk seasoning, what do you do? And because I wanted to make sure I was using authentic seasonings that would go in a real Jamaican jerk, excuse me, rather than just online. And so I think stuff like that is important on honoring and bringing in those cultures, but then also bringing in your own culture. Those kind of things I think are important as well.
Absolutely. One of the things I do too, I mean, that was that was perfect, Mike. So I have family that's from Chile. My both my parents and two more generations back, all from South America, Chile. So Easter Island, the Moai, things of that nature, literally hit home in with me. So when the very first cocktail I ever learned to make was a pisco sour. So when I started bartending in tiki bars, well, at Trader Sam's particularly, I started getting into using things from South America, it's like cachaça and pisco and aguardiente to implement those into tiki cocktails because I mean we already use agricole, and agricole I'm not going to say is like cachaça, but a little bit, kind of, at least certain ones I will say. Um, Agricole is much more refined, and has a much. I like Agricole a little bit better, but cachaça has its place. Pisco, using pisco in certain sours, other than just using lime and adding some, some allspice dram and maybe adding a good rum to it, and you start to get some really really interesting flavors, or even like a nice Jamaican pot still with pisco. Oh, you can do some beautiful beautiful things. So it's for me, it's taking from my own culture and connecting it with the subculture of my profession, and of course, the subculture I've fallen in love with, and exactly trying to show the beauty, try to present the beauty in it, and to maybe create a conversation, start to start a pleasant conversation, and educate some people about things that they may not know about. Instead of looking at it one way, it could be presented to you in a whole nother way and open up your mind. And it's just it's all about perspective, you know.
I like that. I like that a lot. I real quick, I just wanted to say, I found it interesting what you were saying about using them in certain ways. I think as bartenders, it can sometimes be easy to slap a spirit or a culture on top of like, oh, I'm going to do a margarita, but instead of tequila, I'm just going to use pisco, and try and play it off as that culture. And so being able to honor, I think that something you said made me think of that is like, it's not just slapping something on top of something else and be like, oh, this is now this. I'm using Japanese whiskey, so now it's a Japanese sour. Like I think finding ways to honor the culture without just commercializing it, I think is important. So thanks for that.
So let's talk about the future of tiki cocktails. How do you see the scene evolving?
Okay, I'll start with this one. How do I see the scene evolving? Well, I see the standard getting better and better and better because the standard has already been, the bar has been raised as far as I see, and it keeps getting raised because now we have another generation that's being raised in this resurgence that we've had. So they're already getting a very strong foundation from the get-go, whereas some of us who started this 20 years ago, we had to kind of overcome that the last generation who was very into those 90s and 80s and premixes and all that crap. And so we were the pain in the ass young kids who came in and wanted to do everything the hard way. But now the foundation is set for this new generation who don't know anything else but fresh juices, homemade syrups, everything done by hand, everything done with heart. So I can see the industry becoming more and more like the culinary industry, where we're going to see more TV shows about it. We're going to see more competitions about it. We're going to see more molecular gastronomy applied to it. And I can see that like for you to win some sort of James Beard Award or for your program to win some sort of recognition, I believe that even in today's world, you have to have a somewhat of a culinary background to be one of those guys, because there's just, you look at the top 50 bars in the world and every single one of those bartenders, the head bartenders, have some sort of connection in the culinary background. I mean, they spend some time in the kitchen. So I think we're going to see more of a culinary kind of movement towards it. As far as the media is concerned, we're going to see more interest in the different types of bars, just like we saw with food in the last 20, 30 years. You know, drink masters is only the beginning. You'll see.
Well, I love what you said about how culinary being so important, because I don't know about you guys, but I feel like more recently, the more I eat out and drink out, and I won't say it's, I guess it depends on where you're at, but the more I eat out and drink out, the more I somewhat get disappointed. And I don't know if that is due to the standard I hold myself to, or if that's due to other, circumstances. But I agree with you. Like, the more we progress forward, the more I see is like, I'm not okay with mediocre. I'm not okay with and that now it doesn't have to be conflated with expensive, but quality. And I think you're 100% right that people are like starting out, the younger generations are they're going to have a high expectation, because that's where we're at is, and some of that is partially due to like the organic movement and things like that. But I think that's important. So I'm going to play devil's advocate real quick and say, I also enjoy this idea of making it accessible. Sometimes, you have, I don't want to call any bar by name, but when you have a book that you have to sous vide for 9 days, and then when you take that ingredient, you then have to like hand crush it with a mill that was built by Incas, and you have to you kind of get almost too much. And like I'm watching that show on Netflix, and I'm like, that sounds great, but like me coming from a home bartender to becoming a professional bartender, that journey for me stretched from, how can I make this accessible? I want something that's delicious, but I also want, when my recipe is done, if I give it to a friend who's getting into cocktailing, they might have to stretch themselves a little bit, but they can do it. And so I think, so for me, like my family is, this sounds maybe a little egotistical, and I'll deflate myself in a second, but like, they have been like, oh, we've gone out and it was, it was good, but it wasn't as good as yours. And that's something that feels great, but it's become a common thing where friends and family have said, you know what? It's good. It's not as good as yours. And so I think that is playing an important role in what we're having when we eat and drink out, especially in the tiki community, that when you go to a bar, it better not be sour mix. It better be fresh lime, or at the very least, in a higher volume, you better be doing super juice, So yeah, I think you're spot on. But I do think that we need to find that middle ground. That there's been sometimes I've gone out with family members who are not in the industry, and I've had the most amazing meal I've ever had, and they were like, I don't get it. And so finding that middle ground of that accessibility.
I think that both of you have said it so well. To touch on Michael's point of accessibility and Christian's point of just freshness, Orlando has such an amazing and beautiful food scene, and I feel like we really do care so much, like even outside of here, for like the ingredients and what we're putting into. And more the places I go, everyone is fresh squeezing their juice, everyone is making syrups, and it's just really that quality standard. And also I feel like along with that quality and that love, the passion translates. And so when you can like latch into somebody and make somebody love something as much as you love it and as much as you care about it, that really, like, that emotional sense of being just, and you can feel the passion through all of you here. And it's just, that's what's special. And I think that's something that's really going to come and bring this new wave of like younger generation into the subculture and really like keep it alive. And it's such also a beautiful sense of family. So there's so many aspects to this subculture that are so special, and that's something maybe that I really haven't felt until I hit here.
Thank you so much, Tamara, Michael, and Christian, for sharing your insights, experiences, and laughing with us today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
And we want to thank our listeners also for joining us on this tropical journey through tiki culture and cocktails. But remember, when you're sipping on the beach or in your backyard, the spirit of aloha is always just a tiki cocktail away. So until next time, stay thirsty, my friend.
Aloha, listeners!
Please check out our Patreon, the 1944 Society.
What's that?
Well, Christina, if you know, you know.
Subscribe for more, everyone. Patreon.com/TuneInTiki.